You? Do you like it? You do? No, I might have to come up with some macroeconomics if you don't have. Oh, are you in the, are you? Well, I was here. Well, are you good at it? Do you want to help me? Okay.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for the Women in Entrepreneurship panel. We really appreciate you all being here as part of the Startup Purdue Expo that will be taking place all day today. So this is just one of the many exciting events that we have planned. My name is Liane, and I'm the Director of Entrepreneurial Talent for the Purdue Foundry. And I have the pleasure of working with these lovely ladies on a regular basis. So I wanted you all to get the opportunity to learn from them as well. So I'm going to let them tell their stories. So if you would, just tell a little bit about yourself and your journey of being an entrepreneur.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. Hi, my name's Jennifer Crandall. I own a company called Safe Food and Root, and we are a food safety consulting firm. My journey started in '98 out of the food science department. So I graduated and went into the industry for 8 years in manufacturing, and then spent 12 years at corporate Kroger. And once some of the new FDA rules came out, the Food Safety Modernization Act set me up very well, and some of my training at Kroger set me up very well to be able to solve a problem that I was seeing in the import community initially, where they have, they're more like paper pushing with administrative work to be able to do the logistics piece, but the new law requires that they meet U.S. requirements, and they have to have somebody that's trained food safety to review their work, review their suppliers that they're bringing in the products to make sure that they're safe for human consumption. And so I saw an opportunity through some conversations with them and decided to jump at my 20-year out of college moment. So 2018 is when I founded the company. It's been a complete amazing journey ever since, a lot of learning, and I'm drinking from a fire hose because I was middle management and very ingrained in middle management thoughts. So I'll share more about that in a little bit.
Right. So my name is Bilsha, and I'm a data science student here at Purdue, and I'm currently a sophomore. But more importantly, I'm also the head of operations at the Anvil, and we are the student hub for entrepreneurship at Purdue University. So if you're interested in founding a startup, from ideation to development to needing an investment, we're here for you. And my journey in entrepreneurship was actually very simple. I was at an academic advising appointment, and my advisor goes, Bilsha, you know, you're very intelligent and you're really smart, but why aren't you trying in your classes? I said, well, it's not really motivating me. I, of course, will pass because I want that degree, and I can code for sure, but you know, it's not really my top priority. And she goes, you're an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh, what's that? And so I took a class, and I actually came to the Anvil, and seeing these students with all this autonomy and responsibility and like trailblazing, oh, you have a company? Oh, that's crazy. Do you have a debit card? No, but you have a company. That's crazy. And I was like, oh, it really doesn't take that much to be an entrepreneur, but you just have to have the drive and the motivation. And so after that appointment, you know, I was sitting back and thinking, yes, I would be a great software engineer, but should I? Just because I'm good at something, does that mean I should do it? Because I know my capabilities and I can do better. And so that led me to found Cimul, and we're still working in development right now, but the goal of our startup is to mitigate food waste. So I think the restaurant industry throws about $162 billion of food away, and our goal is to move that food, because that food is great food. It's just going to waste because it's not transported at the correct time. And so my startup is working using ride-sharing apps and aggregating drivers, routes, using like AI, machine learning, things like that, to get those food pickups under 45 minutes to someone in need. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Hello. Okay. I could use a software engineer. So my name is Liane Hart, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Verility. Verility's mission is to disrupt the animal health, breeding, and reproduction space. We have a technology that is artificial intelligent that can actually tell a producer or a breeder, you know, if their animal can enter into the breeding herd or not. So it would be a game changer for our industry and really further it along. My journey into entrepreneurship has been very complex, very zigzag. I've always been passionate about animal health since I was young. Started out working at the veterinary clinic all through high school and even through college. I actually got my bachelor's degree here at Purdue University, so I haven't been in the Purdue Memorial Union since '99, so it's great to be back. I also received my master's degree in breeding and genetics, so I'm very familiar with that area. It's kind of my sector. When I came out into the real world, I went into extension for a little bit less than a year. And it was a lot of fun, but it really wasn't for me, and I wanted more. I was a little bored. Actually, Dr. Terry Stewart from the Animal Science Department said, "Hey, Liane, Elanco's looking for a clinical research associate." And I was like, first of all, what's that? And I probably can't do it. And he's like, don't worry, they'll train you. And so that was kind of my foray into Elanco. But what Elanco did for me, and God, I was there for 17 years, would put me into positions where I was really more of a pioneer, where they were creating different roles, and they would say, hey, Liane, we need you to create this role and execute it and show results. And it was always very, very difficult, but it was a little bit entrepreneurship in the corporate life. And then during that time in parallel, I said, I really, need to get into horse racing, thoroughbred horse racing. And that was always my passion, was horses. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I came to Purdue, was because I thought I wanted to be a veterinarian and I wanted to work in the equine industry, and I just needed to figure out how to get paid to do that. So actually, I started out while I was at Elanco with my first broodmare and have been doing that ever since. We have had all winners, and so I think we've had about 10 babies so far at the ground. So it's just a passion of mine that I've been able to do in parallel, and corporate America helped fuel that. So that was my ability to kind of walk that passion forward. When I left Elanco in early 2017, I wanted to push myself even more into thoroughbred racing. I really liked exercise physiology. I've always been in sports, and so I wanted to jump in. Now, mind you, while I was working at Elanco, I'd also go to the backstretch of the racetracks around Indiana and would go work for free for trainers, just because I wanted to learn. And it was amazing to be able to do that and not know anyone in that industry, and just be able to walk in and have people help you. And so that was a little bit of entrepreneurship as well. If you're gonna go down a path that you don't know too much about, you've got to walk into some of these places that, is kind of scary. So when I left Elanco, I decided to kind of jump in the pool of racing. But right when I did that, it was very interesting. I got tapped on the shoulder by a colleague of mine that I used to work with at Elanco, who said, hey, I have a technology out of Harvard Medical School that I'd like you to look at. They're actually using it to test men's samples, semen samples, at home instead of in clinic. So it's just a lot easier for them. Do you think this has any application in the animal health industry? And I went, oh my goodness. I said, that would be amazing. I mean, that part of the industry has been archaic as far as new innovation. And so with that, we kind of formed a very small company, and I kind of rode the wave since then. And I've since become the CEO, whereas at the beginning we were just kind of all co-founders trying to figure it all out. And so that, now I am truly into entrepreneurship. But I think all of the pieces of my journey, the spotlight or the caption that I would say is building to outcomes. So all of the fires I got thrown into, just like all of you, all of the things that you learn when you least expect it, or when it hurts and you're having to think outside the box, that's what leads you to be able to do roles like this. And so I'm very thankful for all the times I've cried and hard situations. So here you go. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sherine Abdelmawla, and I am the CEO of Akanocure Pharmaceuticals. Akanocure is a platform company, and we're trying to develop innovative drugs to address unmet needs in cancer, and we're specifically interested in women-related cancer, so ovarian cancer, triple-negative breast cancer, or metastatic breast cancer. My journey started here at Purdue, actually. I was a pharmacy student originally, and then I came here to Purdue. I was always fascinated by making drugs. I wanted to find solutions for human suffering. So I came to Purdue, and I did my PhD here at the School of Pharmacy. I got my PhD at medicinal chemistry and molecular pharmacology. And then most of my postdoc work was cancer research. And as much as I loved it, at one point you start a family, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna take some time off and devote devote some more time to my family, and I wanted to go get my pharmacy license. So luckily, instead of ending at CVS or Walgreens to do my internship, as part of getting the license, I ended up in a cancer clinic. And I worked for a year at the pharmacy of the cancer clinic with cancer patients who are going through clinical phase 1. And usually those patients are the ones who would have tried everything and nothing worked, so they are put on every clinical trial we could put them on to help them. So I got to see, before that, my work with cancer was working with cells, and it's just like, just science for me. I've never seen a cancer patient face to face or seen how they go through it. So I was the one delivering the medications and seeing how they suffer with all those infusions, all that. So within a year, less than a year of doing this, I said, no, I'm just gonna go back to research. So there was a technology here at Purdue I was interested in because I was very familiar with it, so we ended up licensing that and starting the company. And luckily the professor who invented it and his student are both my co-founders, and I was honored they agreed to work with me, and it's been 7 years.
Yeah, as you can see, there's already a lot of common themes that they are drawing from their experiences, but they're all extremely different experiences that led them to where they are today. So with that, I also want to ask, what is your favorite aspect of being an entrepreneur?
Well, middle management life, right? So I had a lot of red tape that I went through, and Liane's experience with Akanocure, that was very interesting to listen to because I had a lot of similar experiences. Kroger put me in a lot of positions where I could be a little bit more entrepreneurial in I was developing things, I was creating things. And so what I would say, like when I left the company, I remember the VP of the department at that time sat me down and he was like, is there anything we can do to change your mind? And I was like, no, I don't think so, because I was so tired of the red tape. I wanted to make the red tape. I wanted to be the one to say no, which now I'm creating all these corporate programs in our company. That's our mantra, is like making corporate level food safety programs accessible to everyone. And I'm laughing at myself because I'm creating the red tape that I hated so much in my former life. But it really is, it's one of the best things because not only do I get to create it, but I get to break it. And I feel like we're making a lot of changes in the food safety industry and affecting it differently from the consultant perspective, but also targeting those small and mid-sized companies that don't have access to people, and they don't know what, like I kind of mentioned that earlier to Brandon earlier about like people don't know what they don't know. And I've been saying that my entire career, that people don't know what they don't know. And so I'm trying to help them learn what they know, or teach them what they should know. So that's been part of my journey, and that's my favorite part of being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so as an entrepreneur that's like very early stage, I think my favorite part at the moment is being someone who gets to like envision something and breathe life into it and see it happen right in front of my eyes. And I'm currently experiencing this with an annual initiative we're building a co-founder matching platform. And 2 months before we started building, I was just a regular data science student. And then fast forward 2 months, I'm running a team of 11 great software engineers. One of them is doing a PhD in machine learning. And I'm like, listen, I couldn't do any of the work that you're doing, but it's so cool that you're doing this. And kind of having the ability to execute, having the ability to take something from my brain, put it onto a piece of paper and say, hey, I have a dream. Do you believe in it? Are you ready to do this? Because I don't know how to do it, but you might. And that formation of seeing things come into reality is definitely very, very empowering. And what that's done is kind of transform my lifestyle because, instead of going to my CS classes, coding, I'm having like a split between my week of like a maker schedule versus a manager schedule. And I'm meeting fantastic people, ex-CEOs, PhD students, and people that are doing fascinating researchers, professors with their own data analytics companies. And that's wild because I'm looking at you guys and you're all people that I see every day. I know what you all look like. You're my peers, but if you want that opportunity, I feel like entrepreneurship is the way to go. You can bring something to life. You can meet people. And those are my favorite parts.
I think some of my favorite parts are the ability to direct my passion in a way that I want to direct it, and then the ability to operate freely. It's such a change from the past, and we're just so much more agile, I think, in the startup side than you are in a corporate side or in a bigger business. So I really like that aspect. I also very much have enjoyed, I wouldn't have thought this back when I was at Purdue, but I really enjoy learning about the business side, and like I've been able to run my business with the Thoroughbreds since 2007. But this is at a whole other level and with totally at an elite level of people that I'm working with. And so because of that, I've thoroughly enjoyed learning about investment practices, especially on the startup side, expectations and rules and guidelines. And so I enjoy I've always enjoyed negotiation. And so that's very fruitful on this side. And I also think that you're able to surround yourself. You're not always able to do this when you're working for someone else, but you're able to pick your team. And I love being able to pick or choose or have the ability to have these elite people to work around. I may be CEO, but the people that work with me on my team are heads and tails above me. And that is amazing to watch these people work and learn from them. So I think that's probably been one of the most fun things to do, and just the ability to be in the breeding and genetic side of the industry and to stay in animal health. I really love that.
For me, I would say, and it's common between everybody, I think the freedom to execute on your own vision has always been like amazing, because you've always been like, if you're working for someone else, you're executing somebody else's vision, and you just have to, you know, put your head down and do what you're told most of the time, if talking about red tape. But definitely freedom to execute on your own vision has been like very liberating. The relative flexibility you get when you work for yourself, especially if you're a woman and you have your own family. But one more thing is, I ended up meeting a lot of people that I would not have met otherwise, and went to places I would have never been to otherwise. So the expansion of my horizon has been great. It's been not just a professional growth, personal growth too. So for me, I'm not the same person that started this journey 7 years ago, and I'm thankful for who I am now, and I would do it all over again.
Yeah, we really heard how people are so important to the entrepreneurial journey, and I'm happy to hear that, because that's my role at the Foundry, is to help grow teams. So it's a huge part and really important. And we've talked about the good sides of entrepreneurship so far. There's a lot of really great aspects, but it's hard too. So what has been your biggest challenge? And I also want to hear how you overcame.
The overcame is a new question in I have not overcome my biggest challenge. I'm currently experiencing my biggest challenge. So Safe Food and Root, we're a food safety business for food industry, correct? So the food industry during the pandemic never stopped. I just happened to find the business in 2018, and then the pandemic started late 2019, early 2020. We were all remote already, so I didn't have a problem with pivoting towards remote work. We were already doing it. Some of our team travels, some of them stay home, depending on what's needed. So we started out as managing imports, or not managing imports, but managing the FDA regulations around imports for companies, and then we expanded and we started to do food safety consulting for domestic companies. And then what that led us into is into the private equity space. And private equity, mergers and acquisitions, we have a whole team that's designated to providing due diligence work, which is kind of like, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of like a home inspection of the purchase of a home, and we're doing food safety home inspections. That doubled our business last year. So we grew into, all of a sudden, one customer having 55% share of our revenue. And I knew it, I saw it, and I was like, I've got to change this. I have to make a change. And so I already had a business plan. Let's divide it up in thirds. Let's make sure that we're spending time on the private equity side, just a third, like keep the revenue coming, but it's risky. Like, that's too risky to have too many eggs in that basket. And then we have, our food safety consulting space that'd be about a third, and then the importer space be a third. And just as I visualized it, I knew it was a risk. I think, I'm not 100% certain, but I think the war that is currently going on spun the merger and acquisition market to stop movement in the private equity space. And so all of a sudden that 55% revenue has now become zero revenue. And so we had been growing and growing and growing and building and building and building, and all of a sudden we're at a point where like, oh my goodness, we don't have money anymore. And they're not doing anything. And so now we're not pivoting, but we are changing pace. So, if there are investors in the audience, we are starting to do some fundraising to try to resolve this. And I know the Foundry team, I already spoke with Angela, but that's a surprise because when we went through the process, we didn't want to be invested in. So I thought I could do this without help in that sense, but I had a phrase hit me this morning. You get what you pay for. And so I invested in the business 4 years ago, $6,000 of my personal money. That's all I've invested, and I'm kind of getting what I paid for currently. So we're still overcoming the challenge. I have no doubt that we will find our way to get it resolved. We are leaning out our team currently to try to deal with it. That's probably the hardest part. So it is very challenging and emotional to go through lowering your team, the amount of people that you have on your team or the amount of hours that they're spending. So that puts us in a position of renegotiation on everything. And so we're opening up a lot of doors that we didn't expect to. Again, I knew the risk. I had 3 years, I called it, I have a detour in global sourcing while I was at Kroger. And those 3 years taught me this is a risk. So I knew it was a risk. I just didn't act fast enough. There was no way to anticipate that a war might cause a pivot and a change. And like for me, because I'm learning. I'm learning. So I'll turn it over.
Yeah, so very similar to Jennifer, I'm currently in my challenge as well.
Oh.
And that challenge for me would be prioritizing my career. So currently, I'm running operations at the Anvil, I'm a student, and I'm a founder. That's not viable. That's a terrible way to split my time. And so, a little bit of background is I'm working towards obtaining a work visa after I graduate. So I'm kind of working on international student terms as well. And so kind of thinking about, okay, if I drop out of college, I can't just be a founder because then I'm going back to India. And I want to stay here because I was raised here, my family's here, and I want to found my business here, my co-founder is here. So thinking about, okay, how am I going to operate the legalities of being a student, doing that well, because I want to be a technical leader, and if I'm going to run a tech company, that data science degree will be very handy. And so how do I do that? How do I run operations at the Anvil, help other students get up and running? Because people are asking us for advice. And that's really important because that's networking as well. I mean, I'm sure even if you come to me right now, you have an idea and you don't have a startup, I can help you now. And if that gets really well for you and I'm kind of doing okay, I'm sure you'll help me out too. And so networking, being a student, being the founder, how do I balance those things? Which one is my priority? How do I split my time? Where do I put my personal equity? And how do I build a personal brand on top of that? And I guess how I'm overcoming it currently, very subpar, not the ideal solution, if I'm being honest with you. So the way that I've split it up, and so Paul Graham from Y Combinator, which is a very famous startup accelerator, he has the infamous maker versus manager schedule. And a manager schedule is going to meetings hour to hour, kind of conveying what your needs are, what your team's gonna be doing, hitting deliverables. And the maker schedule is I need 3 hours at least to myself to create and build and exert my energy. And that's what software engineering is, and that's what coding a product is. I need that creative energy. But the networking and the business side of things, getting people interested, trying to build a pitch deck and make it look good. I've been working on a pitch deck for months, and it never is good enough. And so getting, right? It literally never is. And so it's like, okay, I need to split my time, I need to be effective in what I do, but I'm coming to the understanding that eventually one thing has to drop. And so that's the challenge we'll overcome, I see. Well, I'm excited to see how it ends up. Yeah.
Well, I had 2 challenges kind of towards the beginning, one of which was to learn the startup community and the investor community. In animal health, that landscape has absolutely changed over a 10-year period. When I was at Elanco, one of the roles I had was called New Product Planning, where I sat across the table with entrepreneurs who had technologies that we may want to bring in. And, you know, at least I was nice to them at the time. I did not realize what they were going through. But we would look at their technology and create business cases and revenues and extrapolate FDA approval timelines and manufacturing timelines and needs. And it was really intense, but you know, looking back, there were just a few really good technical or technology that's out there from an animal health perspective, whereas now it's just grown in abundance. And the strategics, so the top 10 animal health companies in the world, they're really looking at startups now, more so than ever before. So I think putting myself in different people's realm, where they can teach you who your community is, was really, really big. Instead of just thinking like you have something and you're going to go try to sell it to a strategic. You really need the community to help you and push you and support you. I found that through the Purdue Research Foundation, the Purdue Foundry, and also another group called G-Beta here in Indiana. I think they originated out of Wisconsin. Great group to work with. Both has been absolutely tremendous to my career as a CEO and just as an entrepreneur in general. I wish I would have known that existed sooner. I wish I would have known these accelerators and cohorts, you know, to get involved in that and really help your pitch decks or, you know, network and be within a cohort that was within animal health or ag tech. It took me a while to figure all of that out, you know, just the whole startup community, investment community, and investor expectations. You know, when we came out, we had data on the human side, but not on the animal health side, and we thought, hey, we've got data on the human side, that should be good enough, right? And we were selling it off of the IP that we had, and, you know, at the time, to animal health investors, that wasn't good enough. Their investment dollars are much less risky than on the human side. And so what we learned is you better get some POC data in your species in order to be able to push this forward and for me to even want to look at that. So that was a big learning. I think one of my biggest and best learnings was not only know your why as to why you want to be an entrepreneur, but also know your team's why. I thought my why was their why, and that isn't always necessarily the case. So the original co-founders, when I compare my why to theirs, my why was really about making animal health even better, in the breeding and repro sector. Again, it's my area of passion, and I really just want to further that sector along. Their why was a little bit different. It wasn't wrong, it's just different. And so if you just understand that, you can have better communications and better expectations. And I think that you guys you'd be more aligned and be able to hit project milestones a lot faster if you kind of understand that and know everybody's situation and keep regular on that topic.
So I was going to talk about funding, but I guess everybody else talking about funding. It's a common challenge for women specifically to get VC funding. So, and that's an ongoing challenge. I don't think any of us can solve it today. So maybe I'll talk about something else, because that was another challenge for me, and it was trying to be the perfect CEO, but also trying to be the perfect mom and the perfect wife, and then just hearing the word like work-life balance, and then I discovered that that's a myth. It doesn't exist. You can end up killing yourself. I was sleeping like 3 hours a day and still didn't feel like I'm perfect at any of those. So I learned that, go easy on yourself. I make a priority list, and I take one day at a time, and then whatever is the top of the priority list is what I'm dealing with now, and then when I finish it, it's the next and the next. And all I can do is do my best, and if my best is not perfect, that's okay. It is my best. So I guess that's how I relieved myself of that stress.
Yeah, Sherine touched on a really good point, and all of our days are going to look different. And so, especially as an entrepreneur, especially as a mom, Sherine, what does your typical day look like? And then I'd love to hear from the others as well.
So I wake up at 6. That's when my bell rings. So I wake up at 6 because my kids will come and knock on my door at 7 before they tell me goodbye before they go to school. So 6 to 7, I just go through all my emails because email give me anxiety because you wake up and there's like 10 million emails to go through. So I'm just doing that. I go through that. I read the news, read any articles I need to, and then at 7 they go to school, and then I wake up and I make sure that by 9 I'm at my desk at work. 5 or 6 I leave my desk, get to dinner, and then I go back to work, and 9 after everybody's back to bed, and then maybe 9 to midnight or 1 a.m. and then I go to bed. But yeah, that's the only way you can just, because you're not just the CEO when you're in a startup. You're the CEO when you're sometimes doing some of the CSO work, and you're picking up the slack of anybody else, or taking the trash out for the company too, and you're doing so many things. So 9 to 5 is not going to work, and you'll be prepared to do anything that comes your way, and you're dealing with problems all the time, putting up fires all the time, and also so to keep up, it has to be that way. It's not the ideal schedule, but it's what works, and as long as I feel like motivated and happy, like I like what I'm doing, you don't feel tired. It's only when you're not doing something that you like that even 2 hours at work will feel like a burden. So just stay motivated with what you're doing.
I think my day changes, my day changes every day. It's never the same. It depends on where the business is. So, we've been in recently from an R&D perspective, getting data out of, sow farms, and so my hours are their hours. And when I'm not doing that, then, my hours are whoever else's hours I'm working with at the time. So, but I typically, it starts early in the morning. I mean, we've got animals that need to be fed, and so they're up early in the morning waiting, and so that starts very early for me. And then throughout the day, it's whatever that work schedule is, and then it's typically you have dinner, and then you feed the animals, and then you come back in, and then you work till 9:30 to midnight, depending upon. So it's just whatever the needs are is what I deliver. However, I also try to take breaks. I've had to learn and teach myself to, when I can take a break and chill out, then I need to do that, because I've put myself in positions before where I ended up getting sick, or you just push yourself too much. So I'm working on the balance thing, and so that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah, so for me, day-to-day is very much being a student in the first step of the day. I do wake up very early and I run to my laptop, and then 30 minutes later I remember I have to eat breakfast. And after that, I think I try my best to do as minimum schoolwork as possible with maximum, efficacious dose. So trying my best to get as little as I need to get done so I can focus on what I really care about, which is my company. And, like you were saying, Liane, a lot of it just depends on what phase you're at. So I think when we were in our pitch competition phase, we were trying to get some money, with no equity, things like that. Every single day, I would stare at the same PowerPoint presentation. I would mutter to myself over and over and over again. And I would be in lecture, and I would be trying to memorize my script for my pitch deck, and I wouldn't pay attention to lecture. I'm just trying to get things done. And I'm not recommending this lifestyle to anyone, because you should really take your education seriously. And a Purdue degree is a really amazing honor to have. But, how do I balance it? It's that I don't balance it. It's that I just prioritize the things I need to be doing. And now I'm in a phase where I can kind of sit back. I found a team. I'm okay with the money, and we're going to just work on development. And so that's been a lot easier on me, especially because finals are coming up. And so it's just whatever is needed of me.
I'm going to be the oddball. So I do get up somewhat early. My whole thing, when I started the company, I wanted that work-life balance. I was tired of, it wasn't 9 to 5 quite, it was 8 to 5. And I was kind of tired of that. So I went in very intentional to make sure that I had space for myself to have, some of the things that Bilsha said before, with being a manager versus a maker. Thank you. I'm going to have to go look that one up because I dive into a lot of things in the morning. So I spend my mornings probably 7 to 10 o'clock, well, 7 to 9 I'm spending in my head. Not in my head in a bad way, but in a way like trying to fill myself, fill my cup, listening to inspirational things, listening to books, reading, and trying to really pour into myself to be a better leader. Because it's a huge responsibility. The current situation we're in, of course, that's definitely putting us in a different place mentally, and so I'm making sure that I'm filling my cup in some way. And then I usually walk the dog. I sometimes have walking meetings with my CFO. While I'm walking the dog, she's talking to me about everything, and then I get started with my day. So I start usually at 10, taking on meetings. A lot of our clients are on the West Coast, so this does kind of be an advantage that, you know, they're not awake yet. So from 10 until about 6 or 7 o'clock at night, I'm heads down. I am a lot in meetings. And I am trying to not be a manager, but it's very difficult because I am wearing multiple hats. So CEO, yes, but also technical services, and also trying to make sure that the finances are being managed the way I want them to be managed. So it just depends on the day. I hired an executive assistant to start helping me manage my time better and to manage my calendar. Because my calendar is my nemesis and it does get out of control. Remote work really changes the way that you look at your schedule, and we did it in corporate America where we'd have a meeting and it'd be scheduled in an hour and we'd all be scrambling to the next meeting and we'd all be late to the next meeting. It's no different in remote work, and the problem is that you see an hour block on your calendar and you think you have an hour, and you really need 50 minutes. Because you need time to go to the bathroom, you need time to go to walk the dog, you need lunchtime. And so when people, we spend a lot of time in my company talking about, I don't want to say a lot of time, but we do value work-life balance, and it's one of the more important things that we talk about with our team members. We host we did this yesterday actually, we host a monthly meeting with our senior advisors to talk about remote work, some of the challenges that are with it. Because they're all consultants as well, so they're consulting on the side individually as well as working with us, and they all have similar challenges to what we have. So we spend a lot of time focusing on work-life balance, and I'll tell you 90% of them are women. And similar to what Sherine was saying, all of us talk about that. How to balance being a mom, being a wife, being a member of society. What Bilsha's saying, being like, how do I be a CEO and all of the other, hats that I'm wearing? How do I network? How can I work on a pitch deck? It's hard. So that's why I spend that first 2 to 3 hours of my day making sure that I'm level set going into the rest of the day, and then I just hit those meetings as hard as I can to get out the door. I don't want to sound bleak, and I hope I'm not, because I love every minute of it, and it's fun, it's draining, and so it's like always making sure that I'm pouring back into myself. And I might wait on another one to tell you about a different thing, so some coaching that I'm getting.
Sure. And I've sat in on a lot of these women in entrepreneurship panels over the years, and I would hear these amazing things they're talking about, and I'd say, how? When do you do these things? And so I hope that was really helpful for all of you to see kind of the day in the life of an entrepreneur and how you can kind of frame your own life around that as well. One question I want to ask, and I want you all to be thinking about questions that you might have as well, because we'll have some time for that. But how have your priorities really changed over the years from when you first started?
So for me, it really was like the leadership development, and I think Sherine, you were the one that said the personal development really helped you, and that was one of your favorite parts of entrepreneurship. That's definitely one of my things that I focus on, and as the team has grown, and as I realize the business aspect and how much weight is on my shoulders as being CEO and making sure that, oh my gosh, we're hiring people, I need to make sure they have jobs. So really my development has been my biggest focus, and I didn't expect that. I thought, oh, I'm gonna be whipping out food safety assessments and be able to do all this stuff, and it's gonna be super easy. That quickly changed in the first year as soon as I hired a first person. So that I would say has probably been #1 priority of change that I didn't fully see it coming.
So initially, my biggest appeal to entrepreneurship was owning something, and instead of slaving away for another corporation as an individual contributor, the dream was to just work for myself. And I thought the appeal of building your own legacy and overseeing something and having it be my thing, that was initially my priorities. But I realized that's really not the part of entrepreneurship that I love. And that really isn't the important thing, because like Liane was saying, the people I work with, they're far more, well-versed in what they do. They're so talented and intelligent, and I couldn't be where I am without them. And the real priority for me now is focusing on building myself up to be a person that can convey my vision and inspire people properly. And like you were saying, actually, Jennifer, that doesn't happen until you begin with yourself. And spending the time to inspire myself and kind of get introspection every single day. Why am I doing this? Before I speak to this person, why do I want an investor? Why am I applying for this? Is this what I need? Is this what I want? And once I kind of focus in on all of that, I don't need to apply to YC. I don't need to do a flashy marketing scheme. This is what I need. And kind of getting all of those distractions away, focusing in on myself, then I can go to my team. And every single word that I say, they take to their hearts. Every single word that I say, they take seriously, and they absorb it. And the power of being in entrepreneurship that's also a leader is speaking life to the people that you're working with, and you inspire them, and you give them a vision, and you're kind of it's like telepathy. You're giving them something from your head to them, and one day they walk up to you and they're like, that's not really our goal. And I was like, oh, I love that you called it our goal. It's finally not just my goal, it's our goal. And that is my priority, is being careful about the power that a leader has, being careful about the way I speak to people, making sure that I'm good before I present myself to others. And that's my biggest priority now.
Yeah, I would definitely echo all of that. Starting out, we considered, I think I said earlier, we were 4 co-founders, and no one really wanted to step up and say, hey, I'm the absolute leader of this team. And so, we had cross-functional areas that we were just kind of responsible for, and mine was marketing and breeding and genetics. And so to go from that, which I was responsible just for a piece of the pie, to now being the CEO and responsible for the entire pie, has been amazing. What a shift, and what a learning experience that now you have to be the face of the company, you have to direct, and you have to share what the goals should be, the milestones. You have to bless everything. Although, I have these wonderful people on the team, a wonderful CFO, for instance, who's really helping with some investment documents and legal documents, I still have to make sure, that I understand implications that I'm signing off on. And some of those details are not really easy to understand. And so just having that capacity to learn at that level at such a fast pace is what I'm learning as well. And just being a better leader than I ever was before, because this is a high stakes game. I look at it even more significantly than I've ever looked at anything I've done in my past. And so I, basically want to make sure that I am someone who they trust, my team trusts, and that they would follow me to the end, that they would be in the ditch fighting the fight with me. So that's what I'm focusing on right now, and how my priorities have changed.
So for me personally, when you first start a company, usually you're almost, I don't know how to say it, but you're tempted to kind of push yourself into overdrive and push everybody else until you're at the brink of burnout, because you feel like, okay, that's how I'm gonna get where I want to get fast, and that's how I'm gonna make progress. But then you realize if you're burning out and everybody's burning out, then nobody's getting anywhere. So I learned to prioritize everybody's and myself's mental and physical health first. And then all of a sudden, when we do that, we're more productive, we feel better, and then we work a lot with contract research organizations, for example, but we work with individuals. And when we were like, we felt like we're treating them the same way we're treating ourselves too, making sure that they're not just doing a job. We care about them. We care about how their mental and physical health is. We bred a lot of loyalty with these people. They were not just coming and just doing a job anymore. They wanted to get the work done. They felt like the project is not just a paid project, it's their project. And we bred a lot of, we have CROs who offer to do things for free for us, or offer to do things and not charge us for it until we're like raising our next fund. So it's been a learning experience since we started, because at the beginning it was like, no, we were taught that if you're busy all the time and you're working 24/7, that's what success means, or that's what success looks like, but it actually is not. You'll burn out fast. And so learn to prioritize yourself, I guess, and your own health, mental and physical. Mental is mostly if you're an entrepreneur, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Did you hear them all say people? People are important. And so I want to open it up to the audience. Does anybody have any questions at this point for the panel? Yeah.
I want to ask you, how do you know that when your idea, when you should pivot and change, and what you're doing isn't working, to when that you're just giving up too early, or you're just giving up and you should try more?
If I'm understanding right, like how to know when to pivot whenever you're going down a path of it might not be working.
Yeah.
I think that's what I'm currently doing, and it's what I would say is I wish I would have trusted my gut instincts earlier. So sometimes I spend time in self-doubt that like what I'm seeing and observing, because I'm new to the entrepreneurial space, and that it's you don't have that, like in corporate America. That's one of the things that I loved about corporate America, was that it does give you this like security of team, of network to be able to talk to. You have this cushion to be able to compare notes to and make sure that you're doing the right thing, although you do have the red tape that comes with it. And that's one of the concerns that I have whenever I'm going into a certain situation that I've never been navigating down. So I one, trust your gut. If you see something that you're pivoting and going away that it doesn't look like it's probably appropriate, then you probably should listen to that inner voice. Something's being told, you're hearing something intuitively. And then ask some mentors. Ask people that have been in your shoes before, or somebody that it's a trusted mentor, let me be clear, because you don't want to tell everybody your secrets until you're ready to tell your secrets. But you want to make sure that you're not telling things that are going to harm your company either. So that would be my advice.
I can answer to that too. So if you're building something in a company, you want to make sure that you talk to the customer, whoever that is. So for example, if I'm raising funding right now, so my customer is that investor. So I have to ask for feedback even if they say no. So I want to make sure that when you talk to your customer, you're building something they want. If everything you have built, your customer is telling you that's not what I want, then that it's time to pivot right away. Like we ended up changing our targets, for example, because I present to investors and it's like, oh, well, we like your platform, it's great, but maybe if you have a different target. So that's, and if it comes up several times, that's time to pivot. And of course, when you pivot, you, as mentioned, you have to talk to your investors. You have, talk to your advisors. Make sure you have a lot of mentors. If you can't afford advisors, make sure there are a lot of, like at Purdue here, you have a ton of resources when it comes to mentors. Talk to your mentors, people who've done this before. But the number one is build something that people need. If you're building something that you like but nobody else wants, then that's when you just need to change.
No, that's okay. Any other questions? Yeah?
Can you speak to a little more about building a team? You've created this, you developed this idea, this vision for your company, and then you have to build out the resources, get the funding, but you also have to build out this amazing team and identifying those people, the right people to fit the right place and at the right price point. Can you speak to that? experiences like?
Yeah, my team is exceptional. They're very, very good. The original co-founders that we had, they thought they wanted to be co-founders and they did a really good job, but then they got pulled. So you have to think about that, about what is that person's, the rest of the other part of their life is, because they can get pulled into that. They may have other businesses that they have to tend to, or significant family obligations that come up. So when you're looking at potential teammates, look at that part too, to see if that could be an issue. Like, do you feel like you might have too much of a pull where you can't push our company forward? So I would look at that part of their life, but certainly look within your network. The people that I found on my team today are because of network. One of them I used to work with at Elanco Animal Health for a number of years. And while I was learning about the investment side, they had already been through that. They had a wonderful financial background, already been in kind of as an investor themselves. So they were teaching me along the way. And while they were teaching me, I was teaching them about what we have. And then it became very much of a synergistic conversation of, I want to be a part of that. Well, I want you to be a part of this. And so that was more natural. The other individual, the engineer that we have on our team, fantastic executive level type of person that was needed at a time like this. That was again through network, and it was, hey, I'm looking for A. Do you know someone who could fit that for me? Hey, I got someone on my board. Here, call this person. And then it was a series of conversations, and then again, they became interested. So that was more network oriented. So I feel like it's a combination of just your most close personal network that you kind of look into, as well as kind of your secondary, maybe who you worked with in the past or who you know that could fill those roles. But I would say try to think of those other functional areas that you would like to fill as very complementary to you and the other areas that are needed, so that you can build a really nice team that can thrive because you're so complementary. You're not so heavy weighted on, let's say, research and development versus commercialization. So look within your own network and who you've worked with in the past, and the network that you have, I would say, ask who they know, that they trust, and then think about their other half of their life and make sure there's not too much of a pull on that they can't function.
That's a great point. I think we have another question.
Yeah, so this especially with some of you ladies kind of in the tech space, question is just about, what do you think? So last fall we had John Carreyrou. He was the Wall Street Journal reporter that broke the story about Elizabeth Holmes and the Theranos event, and part of that discussion was about how that would affect women entrepreneurs kind of going forward. And with a lot of you ladies kind of in the tech sectors, have you noticed, do you feel any of the kind of blowback from that, from being a woman-led business?
Wow, she's a biotech, so I'll take that.
Yeah, I actually talked at a women conference and I called it the Holmes effect. It's like if one woman makes a mistake, it's like all of us made that mistake, versus that men make mistakes all the time, right? But yes, there is some little bit of like, I don't know, doubt about women. We're like, can you really do that? Like we have amazing science, and if I say, okay, our platform can do this, this, and that, and I get that, look, really? You can really do that? Show us the data. And I'm like, yeah, I have the data. And then they keep asking about the data. I do have it. Like, they don't even believe that we have it. So sometimes, yeah, it is that. And she definitely did hurt all of us. But what I found is, like, if you ignore these, like, doubting looks and have enough confidence in what you're saying, it kind of dissipates really quickly. And as long as, of course, you have the data to back it up and, the science to back it up. So, yeah, you get that at the beginning, but you can overcome it with your personality.
And can I just add to that, non-tech related, and I'm not as familiar with the situation, but the conversations that I had yesterday that I mentioned that we host to kind of work-life balance conversation, being a woman entrepreneur and being just a woman in corporate America or wherever we are, we get doubts all the time. And I know there's a meme that's going around, it's been going around a couple of years, that just expresses how like accidentally a guy answered like a common email box to a customer, and he answered and it looked like he was signing as the woman, and he was getting so much backlash from that customer. And it proved, as you watch the kind of exchange, he was like, I had no idea that she knows everything I know. She is the same person answering every single time. We have the same information, same data, the same instructions, and she gets this kind of response every time. And not that this is a platform to talk about like how difficult it is to be a woman in the industry, but that's real. And I just had that conversation yesterday with one of my team members and one of her clients, and she was experiencing that exact thing. She was like, I think if I was a man, he'd be listening more. So just to kind of add that, because it may not have just happened. This has been a long time.
I actually have a friend, and she's pretty young. She, like out of grad school, she started a company, amazing technology. She's very brilliant. And because her technology is so out of the box and very revolutionizing, and she wrote a piece, a blog or a post that I read, that she was so frustrated that everybody's calling her a fraud. A lot of people are calling her homes and a fraud. She just raised $100 million. By some of the best investors in the industry. So her science is solid, her idea is solid, she's brilliant, but she also had to deal with that. And she doesn't, and she's like, you know, she comes from the biggest universities, she has the backing of some of the best names in the industry as far as advisors and, you know, co-founders, and she still had to go through that. So imagine if you're, you know, not having all those advantages too. So yeah, it does have an effect, but you know, she kept her head down, kept going, and didn't care about what they said, so she got where she needed to go.
Yeah, and just not to dismiss, but there's also the whole layer of minority as well. So like minority women and minority owners. I think that, you know, that's why the government invests in us. That's why there are certifications to help us. We're trying to push and advance that cause, obviously, as a community. But it's very, very frustrating to run into that, and that is an obstacle that we always have to overcome.
Yeah, certainly. I think we had a question in the back. Yeah.
Yes. My question is related to receiving adverse results. I'm an entrepreneur myself, and recently we've received some negative feedback from some of our prospective investors. And I want to just get some of your strategies on how you continue to fill your bucket or fill your cup after receiving such, unideal results from people you really expected to receive positive results from. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, so with that, you know, I think it's interesting because when you get advice from an investor, that's really valuable. They're telling you, I wouldn't put my money down on this, and if the investor won't put their money down, a customer will definitely not put their money down on this. And what I've done for myself is kind of think, okay, let's look at other companies that are successful. Did they start out with their initial vision? Did they execute exactly what they came out to do? And a lot of the things didn't end up that way. Meta, they're building the metaverse. They have great tech. They're building APIs. They just started out as a virtual yearbook, and Instagram, Twitter, things like that. A lot of them originated with things and goals that have nothing to do with what they are today. And so when you get that negative feedback and someone's telling you your goals or what you're doing right now isn't good enough, that's actually quite ideal, because what that's telling you is that you're on your way to growth. You're on your way to a pivot that people will actually look at and people will actually put money down on. And so look back onto those stories and kind of encourage yourself with the idea that, you know, no growth is linear and you're gonna have to pivot at some point. At least you're doing it right now, and at least you're there now.
I would add to that, because it hurts, you know, when you get those, you're sitting on a Zoom call and you're like, oh. But I understand, and I agree with you, because the times that that's happened to us, it ended up in a pivot, because you start to get multiple answers that are the same. So, you know, the first time it was, again, go into the species that you intend to launch in, you know, give me some POC data and then we'll talk. So that was a pivot for us. And then the next time, it was, you're not far enough along. You're too early in the startup world. You hear that often when you're in our stage. Which is kind of funny because some of these investor websites say early stage investing, and I'm like, hey. Yeah, it's relative, you're exactly right. So what we did was I kind of took a step back and I looked back at the competitions that were in ag tech, and knowing that the animal health dollars are less risky, I'm like, well, where are they going to? What do those guys look like? And, you know, of course you have to have a great team. I mean, that's just table stakes. But beyond that, what's our tech look like? What's everybody gravitating to, or where they're at in their process? And it seemed to be in animal health, very early stage revenue versus in the development stage. So I challenged our team last October when we first were able to meet face to face, was how do we were going to be 2 years before we were to enter market. And I said, how do we get into the market sooner? We've got to challenge ourselves, because I'm afraid we're not going to get investment dollars unless we start getting some revenue. I don't care how we get it. It could be letters of intent, purchase orders, you know, but let's try to figure that out. And so we totally did a major 180 and a pivot of how we were going to enter the market. And that in itself, I could go back to those investors and say, hey, we changed our game. And we're able now to get into the market next year and not 2 years from now. And this is how we're going to do that. Does that seem more enticing to you? And it did, you know, so when you change your game and you can go back to them and say, hey, you know, I took your feedback into consideration, and this is how we've made our adjustments. They really look highly on that, so.
I can actually add to that. So when you're going into fundraising, the most important thing is mindset. So go in with the mindset that no is the default and yes is the exception. And I got several very good advices. One of them was, with investment, it's a numbers game. So you're going to reach out to 100 investors, and the response rate is going to be 10%. So you're going to get 10% of those 10 meetings. So that was my goal. So I went out, I reached 107 investors, and I was like, I hope I'm getting 10 meetings. And I got, well, my response rate was 28%. So I was happy. Okay, 28 usually is abysmal if you look at it, but if you compare it to the 10%, that's great. And then out of those 10 meetings, who's going to say yes, who's going to say no? So, and I was going into with the mindset that I'm going to do my best, but it's going to be a no. And then the second advice I got is, and it was from an NSF mentor who said, if you look at the success rates of VCs, it's 10 to 15%, right? Which means they are mostly 85 to 90% wrong. So don't take their no as personal. And another investor who gave me an advice, and he said, we do not lose any money by passing out on a good deal or by saying no. We don't lose money because we're still gonna get, you know, a good deal. So don't take it personal. No is, get used to no. Get used to having very thick skin. And then number three, if you get feedback, it's actually, even if it's negative, that's extremely valuable. Usually they don't give feedback. It's a very polite no with no feedback. If somebody actually gave you feedback, that is amazing. No matter how negative it is, take it as a constructive, that's a constructive feedback. I will just learn from it. So I would say, consider yourself lucky you got feedback. Don't get discouraged. What I give myself 2 days exactly after investor meeting to feel deflated, sorry for myself, everything. And after those 2 days, I snap out of it and I'm good to go again. But it's normal to feel bad, but it's okay. And that's the norm. You're not alone in that. So.
That's all really great advice. I want to leave some time at the end for you to have one-on-one conversations with all of them if you wish. And so this is going to be the last question. What advice would you give to aspiring entrepreneurs?
Oh no, please.
Oh. No, you can end it. I'll start one, then you can end it. Because I'm sure yours will be better advice. Listening to these three, I'm just like, oh my gosh, I'm inspired by these three. So this is, one thing is, you know, I would say funding early, because I'm learning a valuable lesson currently that probably needed it and didn't think I did. And I would say that would be one piece of advice. The other piece is listen to people when they tell you. You know, all of this, we were talking about some of the feedback that you receive, and Some of the advice that you get from mentors, trust your instinct, that, you know, we all face that mental game. And so pour into yourself, find ways to pour into yourself. I mentioned I would say something at the end about coaching. So we're in a coaching program currently that is trying to give the business a break from me for 4 weeks. So the selling point was that you get to take 4 weeks off. That's not really what I want. But the business to break the business, but they're encouraging, remind yourself to go give back, pour back into your cup. And so I'm doing that coaching program so that I can learn how to step away from the business, that the business can run itself, that it can become an asset, not a liability to myself. So I would say also look at it as that. And don't lose faith in yourself. So find ways to keep the faith with yourself.
Yeah, so I think I've got two things. My first thing is very related to our last question, actually. And a huge thing is that the pitch that you give to one person doesn't have to be the same pitch you give to someone else. And I've made a huge mistake, actually, which was doing a pitch that would very much appeal to someone, maybe from the West or East Coast, very familiar with tech, Silicon Valley type appealing, Gen Z VC, beautiful pitch. But I gave it to an Indiana fund, and the people that I was specifically pitching to were very business focused and they were very people focused. And when I said to them, oh, we're building a machine learning backed autonomous system with multi-threading to immediately transport food under this amount of time, they were like, oh, I'm sure the tech works, but like, what's so cool about that? And I'm like, oh, but when I practiced this pitch to people from Gen Z VC, they loved it. They were like, this is amazing, this is a great tech that you're building. And I would really, you know, kind of take the negative feedback that you get from people that don't necessarily align with the perspective and the worldview that you share, and learn to translate your appeal to other people of other kinds of places, and meet them at the value that they're used to providing, because you want money from everywhere, and you want diversity in your investor portfolio, and so you have to learn to translate those things. My second piece of advice would be, you don't have to be an expert in your domain or field to be a CEO or run a startup in that domain. And I'm saying that because as a student, you know, I'm very like ingrained into you need to take this class before you can take this upper level course. You need to follow this path, and once you have that, then you can do a job. You can be a software engineer, then you can be a PM, then you can be a director, architect, and you have all of these pathways that you need to follow. But that's definitely not the case when you're having a startup, because if you want to found something, everyone's going to be learning along the way. No one's going to just sit by and be like, okay, I'm qualified enough for this role, 9 to 5, I'm going to clock out. Everyone's learning. And you can hire talent. You can hire people that have the expertise that you don't have to execute the product you're building. So don't hesitate to start something just because you feel like, I've never worked in the industry for like 17 years kind of thing, and that's very, very cool. Technical leadership is very key. But don't let that be something that holds you back, because you can acquire that and you can find that, and that's why you build a team, is to fill in the gaps that you can't provide at the moment. And make sure to enter the market at the right time, and, you know, empower yourself to do that.
I would say first about finance a little bit. If you're early, be prepared to put in your own money, or have the understanding of your teammates of how much money you all can put in together and where they draw the line, what's their threshold. So understand that for yourself as well. Also be prepared to have to be creative and live outside of the box 24/7. And I've noticed when I've worked with people who don't tend to do that, I struggle now, because I'm like, would you be creative with the solution? But yeah, so learn just to live outside of the box, and prepare to hustle. You're going to be hustling all the time. Let's see. I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay, so you guys touched on all of the points, but I would say work on your resilience, because the trip up is always like this. It's up and down and up and down, and if you're in a downtime, make sure that you kind of refuse to fail, refuse to give up, not just don't give up, don't quit, no, refuse. Be just that resilient, have that amazing amount of grit, and then you will make it. It's hard work, not intelligence, not not what you know, because as everybody said, you can hire people and you can learn if you have potential. But it's your grit and your resilience. That'll be number one. And then number two, there's a saying that I live by because it popped up on my cell phone at a very low time in our company, at a very tough time. And I was going to meet investors and we didn't have enough money to go on, and it said, you did not just get so far to only get so far. It's very generic, right? But it spoke to me that day, and I lived by it to that day. So a lot of the times we always look like we're running that marathon to get to that point, and then we keep looking forward to what we haven't accomplished yet. And then at that time, sometimes you need to stop and then look back what you have accomplished. Because a lot of the times we forget that we've come so far, we've done so much, we just keep looking at the negative of what we haven't accomplished yet. And when I stop and then I learn to write down, here's what I've done, 1, 2, 3, here's what we've accomplished. And I look at it, I'm like, oh, we're good, we've done so much. Okay, no, we can make it. Even if it's an obstacle, we'll get through it because we've gotten through all this. So just learn to kind of pat yourself on the back, look at what you've done, and you haven't come so far to just come so far. Right?
Well, this has been incredible. Thank you all so much for being on the panel today. I've learned a lot. I hope all of you have learned a lot as well. I do encourage you, we have about 15 more minutes in this room, and so please come up, ask individual questions if you have any. And then this afternoon is another great part of the expo is the boiler demo day. Starts at 1:30. I think Bilsha is pitching.
No, I am not.
She is not, but there are other students that will be pitching. And so I encourage all of you to attend that as well. Then we have the Foundry Showcase at 5:30, just showcasing more of our Foundry companies as well. So I want to thank you all for attending and thank you all for being on the panel. It's been wonderful.